golden towers and hidden hearts, Nathaniel West stood at the window of his penthouse, gazing at the city that had made him a fortune. At 35, he had transformed a coding obsession into Horizon Technologies, now valued at over $2 billion. The skyline before him was dotted with buildings bearing his company's name. Yet, until 6 months ago, something had always been missing. Are the eye sculptures melting yet? Olivia Pearson appeared in the reflection beside him, her chestnut hair pinned in an elegant updo that revealed the delicate curve of her neck. She slipped her arm through his, and he marveled at how this woman had breezed into his life and made it whole. "They're fine," he assured her, turning to kiss her temple. "Though I still think live penguins would have made a more memorable centerpiece." Olivia laughed, the sound warming the cool modern space of his apartment. "Of course you do. Next you'll suggest we should have held the engagement party in Antarctica just so I could get the perfect wildlife shots." As a renowned nature photographer, whose work graced the covers of National Geographic and Smithsonian, Olivia had spent years tracking endangered species across remote corners of the globe. Her camera had captured the rarest moments of beauty in the harshest environments. Yet somehow, despite their drastically different worlds, they had found each other at a charity gala 10 months ago. "The caterers say we're ready," his assistant Blake announced, appearing with a tablet in hand. "And the Henderson family just arrived. That's everyone on the list." Nathaniel nodded, feeling a swell of anticipation. Tonight wasn't just a celebration of their engagement. It was his declaration that Nathaniel West had finally found something money couldn't buy. The penthouse transformed as evening fell, glowing with warm light that danced off crystal glasses and illuminated the faces of 70 carefully selected guests, business partners who had become friends, family members who had supported his vision when it was merely lines of code. And at the center of it all, Olivia radiant in a midnight blue gown that shimmered as she moved through the crowd. "I still can't believe you're marrying my brother," whispered Vanessa, appearing at his side with a flute of champagne. His youngest sister had flown in from London where she managed Horizon's European operations. "Remember when you told me you'd never have time for relationships because they'd distract from building the company?" Nathaniel chuckled. "That was before I met someone who makes success feel hollow without her." Across the room, he watched Olivia charm the chief financial officer of his company with stories of her close encounter with a snow leopard in the Himalayas. Her hands moved animatedly as she spoke, the 5-carat engagement ring catching the light with each gesture. She felt his gaze and looked up, sending him a private smile that made his chest tighten. "You know what's strange?" Vanessa mused, following his line of sight. "I feel like I've seen her somewhere before you two met. Maybe in a magazine." Nathaniel shrugged. "Probably. Her work is everywhere." The evening progressed flawlessly. The caterers moved with silent efficiency, replacing empty trays with fresh delicacies. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Conversation flowed as freely as the vintage champagne. At precisely 9 o'clock, Nathaniel clinked his glass for attention. The room quieted as he stood beside Olivia, their fingers intertwined. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, the practiced public speaker in him taking over. "Most of you have known me long enough to remember when Horizon was just 3 programmers in a garage, with too much caffeine and not enough sleep." Appreciative laughter rippled through the crowd. "I've always believed that success comes to those who focus relentlessly on their goals. But Olivia has taught me that true fulfillment comes from opening your heart to possibilities you never planned for." He raised his glass. "To the woman who showed me that life's most precious moments can't be coded, scheduled, or acquired. They can only be lived." The guests applauded as Nathaniel kissed Olivia, tasting champagne on her lips. Yet as they parted, he noticed something flicker in her expression, a shadow crossing her features before her smile returned. "Is everything all right?" he murmured. "Perfect," she assured him, squeezing his hand. "Everything is perfect." Neither of them noticed the server standing near the kitchen entrance, her tray forgotten as she stared at Olivia with unmistakable recognition. Jasmine Reeves watched the couple with a growing sense of disbelief, the weight of what she knew pressing against her chest like a stone. The servers whispered Jasmine Reeves hadn't expected to recognize anyone at tonight's event. Working high-profile parties at elite penthouses was just another gig to help pay for her final semester of nursing school. The catering company paid well for discretion and efficiency served smile, disappear. But the moment she stepped into the room with a tray of champagne flutes, the familiar profile of Olivia Pearson had stopped her cold. 3 years ago, Jasmine had worked reception at Wellspring Cancer Treatment Center. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills while she completed her prerequisites. She remembered every detail of the day Olivia had first walked in, not as a patient, but as a devoted partner to someone else entirely. "Table 6 needs more wine," hissed Paolo, the catering manager, breaking her trance. "And stop staring at the guests. They hate that." Jasmine nodded mechanically, but her eyes kept drifting back to Olivia throughout the evening. Same graceful neck, same melodic laugh, but now draped in wealth and engaged to one of the most powerful men in tech. "You okay?" asked Devon, another server, as they restocked glasses in the kitchen. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that." Jasmine murmured. She thought of Harrison Fallon, brilliant, gentle Harrison wasting away in room 412 while Olivia sat beside him day after day. Harrison, who had shown Jasmine his tech designs between chemo treatments. Harrison, whose innovative ideas sounded remarkably similar to what had later made Nathaniel West billions. The engagement toast had nearly broken her resolve. Watching Nathaniel West gaze adoringly at Olivia while declaring his love made Jasmine's stomach twist. He had no idea who he was really marrying. I shouldn't get involved, she whispered to herself as she arranged dessert plates. It's not my business. But Harrison's face kept appearing in her mind, his kind eyes. His determination to finish his work even as the cancer consumed him. He'd shown her the prototypes, explained the algorithms with excitement even when his voice was hoarse from treatment. This will change everything, he'd told her, once I'm well enough to pitch it properly. He never got the chance. As the party reached its peak, Jasmine found herself at a crossroads. The ethical frameworks she'd studied in nursing school offered little guidance for this situation. Do no harm, but to whom? The truth could destroy a relationship, but a lie of omission felt equally damaging. While refilling water glasses, she overheard fragments of conversation from Nathaniel's sister. I swear I've seen her before, Vanessa insisted to an older woman. Something feels off. Don't be dramatic, the woman replied. Nathaniel is finally happy. Don't ruin this with baseless suspicions. The exchange solidified Jasmine's decision. She set down her tray and smoothed her uniform. Approaching Nathaniel directly was risky. He was surrounded by guests, and Paolo would fire her on the spot. Instead, she caught the eye of his assistant, Blake, who had been orchestrating the event from the periphery. Excuse me, Jasmine said quietly. I need to speak with Mr. West about something urgent, something private. Blake's expression hardened with practiced skepticism. Mr. West is celebrating his engagement. Whatever it is can wait. It's about Miss Pearson, Jasmine pressed. I knew her ... before. And Mr. West should know who he's really marrying. Something in her tone must have registered because Blake's professional mask slipped momentarily. He studied her face, then nodded curtly. Wait by the service entrance. I'll see what I can do. The next 10 minutes stretched eternally as Jasmine stood in the hallway, questioning her decision with each passing second. The muffled sounds of celebration made her doubt intensify. Who was she to disrupt this night? Finally, the door opened, and Nathaniel West emerged, his expression a mixture of irritation and curiosity. My assistant says you have something urgent to tell me. His voice was controlled but cool. Jasmine swallowed hard. I'm sorry to interrupt your celebration, Mr. West, but I recognized your fiancée tonight, and I think you should know where I know her from. And where is that? A defensive edge crept into his tone. Wellspring Cancer Center. I worked reception there 3 years ago. She hesitated, then continued. Miss Pearson spent months there, but not as a patient. She was caring for a man named Harrison Fallon. Nathaniel's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. And why should that matter to me? Because Harrison was a tech developer. He was working on breakthrough interface technology during his treatment. He showed me his prototypes, his plans. Jasmine took a deep breath. The same technology that became the foundation of your company's most successful product line a year later. Nathaniel's posture stiffened. Are you suggesting my fiancé stole intellectual property? That's a serious accusation. I'm not suggesting anything, sir. I'm just telling you what I know. Jasmine's voice grew steadier. Harrison died believing his work would never see the light of day. Then suddenly, similar technology appears under your company's name, and the woman who was by his side through every treatment is now wearing your ring. The color drained from Nathaniel's face. What was the nature of their relationship? They were engaged, Mr. West. She wore a different ring, then smaller, but she cherished it. She was devoted to him until the end. Jasmine paused. Harrison mentioned family conflicts that kept his relatives away during his illness. He said his family never supported his vision. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed as connections formed behind them. What did he look like? This Harrison. Tall, like you. Same jawline, actually. Jasmine realized with growing certainty. He showed me a photo once, of him with his brother. They had a falling out over business directions. The brother had started a tech company that... Her voice trailed off as understanding dawned in Nathaniel's eyes. That would be me, he said, his voice barely audible. Harrison was my brother. The silence between them was deafening. Through the door, they could hear laughter and music continuing, oblivious to the revelation unfolding in the hallway. I haven't spoken to Harrison in 7 years, Nathaniel finally said. I didn't even know he was sick, or that he had died. Guilt and anger warred in his expression. I'm sorry, Jasmine said. I didn't want to ruin your evening, but I would want to know if I were you. Nathaniel straightened his shoulders, his face hardening into the mask of a businessman who had made difficult decisions before. Thank you for your honesty. I'll handle this from here. As he turned to re-enter the party, Jasmine caught his arm. Mr. West, Harrison spoke of you, even at the end. Whatever happened between you, he still cared. Nathaniel nodded once, then pushed through the door. back into the celebration that now felt like a charade. Jasmine watched him go, wondering if she'd done the right thing or merely opened wounds that could never truly heal. From across the room, Olivia caught sight of Nathaniel's expression as he re-entered and froze mid-conversation. Their eyes met, and in that moment, before any words were spoken, she knew the truth had finally surfaced. Rising like a bubble through champagne to burst at the pinnacle of their celebration, shattered glasses. Nathaniel moved through his own engagement party like a ghost. Guests parted before him, conversations faltering as they sensed the shift in atmosphere. His focus remained fixed on Olivia, who stood across the room speaking with a venture capitalist, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she watched his approach. "Nathaniel," she said when he reached her, voice lilting with practiced concern, "is everything okay?" "We need to talk," he replied, voice low but firm. Privately, without waiting for her response, he took her elbow and guided her toward his home office. The curious eyes of 70 guests followed their exit, whispers already beginning to circulate. Vanessa started to follow, but Blake intercepted her with a subtle shake of his head. Once inside the office, Nathaniel closed the door and faced Olivia. In the subdued lighting, her beauty still struck him, the elegant curve of her neck, the intelligence in her eyes. But now he searched for traces of Harrison in the way she held herself, in the gestures he might have missed. "You knew my brother," he said simply. The color drained from Olivia's face, but she didn't immediately deny it. Instead, a complex series of emotions crossed her features: shock, resignation, and something like relief. "How did you find out?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "One of the servers recognized you from the cancer center." Nathaniel's hands clenched at his sides. "Were you ever going to tell me that you were engaged to Harrison? That you watched him die while I didn't even know he was sick?" Olivia sank into a leather chair, her composure cracking. "I was going to tell you. I just never found the right moment." "The right moment?" Nathaniel's voice rose. "Perhaps before accepting my proposal, before wearing my ring while keeping his secrets." "It wasn't like that," she insisted. "When we met at the gala, I had no idea who you were. Your company name is different from your family name. It wasn't until our third date, when you mentioned a childhood in Connecticut, that I realized the connection. And yet you said nothing." "I was afraid." Tears welled in her eyes. "Afraid you'd think I was using you or that I had some ulterior motive. By then, I was already falling for you." Nathaniel paced the room, running his hand through his hair. "Harrison's technology, the interfaces that became Horizon's breakthrough product line. Did you give those to me?" Olivia's silence was confirmation enough. "The anonymous package," he continued, pieces falling into place. "The one that arrived with no return address 3 years ago, containing the algorithmic framework that revolutionized our direction. That was you." "Harrison wanted his work to matter," she said quietly. "Before he died, he made me promise to get it to someone who could implement it. He mentioned you, said despite your differences, you had the business acumen he lacked. So you just delivered his life's work to me without even telling me he was gone." Nathaniel's voice broke. "Do you have any idea what that means? I've built an empire on my brother's ideas without ever giving him credit." Outside the office, the party continued, but the mood had shifted. Guests checked watches and exchanged concerned glances. Through the door came the sound of raised voices, though the words remained indistinct. "I honored his wishes," Olivia said. "He didn't want credit. He wanted impact. That wasn't your decision to make." "No, then whose was it?" "Yours. The brother who cut him off because his health issues made him an unreliable business partner." Her own anger surfaced now. "You weren't there, Nathaniel. You didn't hold his hand through chemo. You didn't hear him talk about you with such complicated love and admiration even after everything." The accusation hit Nathaniel like a physical blow. He braced himself against his desk, memories flooding back of their last argument: Harrison's unpredictable schedule, his refusal to commit to deadlines, his insistence that their fledgling company needed to prioritize innovation over profit. Nathaniel had thought his brother was being flaky and idealistic. He never knew Harrison was already battling the early symptoms of the disease that would eventually take his life. "I didn't know he was sick," Nathaniel whispered. "He never told me." "He didn't tell anyone until he collapsed in his apartment," Olivia said. "I met him in the hospital. I was photographing a story on healthcare access. He was the patient who kept asking for his laptop so he could keep working." A knock at the door interrupted them. Blake's voice came through. "Sir, guests are starting to leave. Should I tell them something came up?" Nathaniel called back. "Family emergency. Make our apologies." Silence fell between them as Blake's footsteps retreated. Outside, the sounds of the party began to dissolve, murmured goodbyes, the clink of glasses being cleared. "I loved him," Olivia said finally, "with everything I had, and then I lost him. I spent 2 years barely functioning, traveling to the most remote places I could find, trying to outrun grief." She looked up at Nathaniel. "And then I met you. I wasn't looking for another love, especially not with his brother. But there you were, carrying pieces of him, the same determination, different expressions of the same brilliance. Was I just a replacement?" The question that had been forming in his mind finally emerged. "No," she answered without hesitation. "You're nothing alike in so many ways. I fell in love with you for who you are, but I couldn't figure out how to tell you about Harrison without destroying everything." Nathaniel looked at the woman he'd planned to marry, seeing her truly for the first time. The burden she'd carried, the choices she'd made, the love she'd given to both brothers. "I need time," he said finally, "to process all of this." Olivia nodded, removing the engagement ring slowly and placing it on his desk. The diamond caught the light, refracting it across the walls. "I understand." As she rose to leave, Nathaniel caught her hand. "Just tell me one thing. Was any of it real?" "Us." Olivia met his gaze directly. "All of it. That's why it hurt so much." The man in the photographs 1 month after the disastrous engagement party. Nathaniel stood in a storage facility in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The air was musty with neglect. The unit filled with boxes he'd paid to store but never visited after Harrison's apartment had been cleared out. He hadn't known who had arranged it. Now he understood it had been Olivia. "These should be the last ones," said Eleanor, his mother's former assistant who had overseen the packing. She had come at his request to help him face what he'd been avoiding. The first box contained Harrison's personal effects, notebooks filled with his distinctive scrawl, a collection of vintage calculators, their father's old wristwatch that Nathaniel had thought lost. The second box held photo albums, and there she was, younger and dressed simply, her arm around Harrison, whose illness was already visible in his thinness, though his smile remained vibrant. "He looks happy here," Nathaniel observed, tracing his brother's face through the plastic sleeve. "He was, despite everything," Eleanor said. She gave him that. In the photographs, Nathaniel saw another life unfolding, one where his brother found love while facing death, where Olivia held Harrison through the worst moments without flinching. There were pictures of them in hospital rooms, Harrison connected to 4 lines while they played chess, images of them in a small apartment, surrounded by Harrison's diagrams and Olivia's camera equipment. The third box contained Harrison's research or Lyra versions of what would eventually become Horizon's core technology. Seeing his brother's original notes, Nathaniel recognized the brilliance that he had once dismissed as impractical. Harrison had seen possibilities that Nathaniel, focused on immediate market applications, had missed entirely. "He sent me emails," Nathaniel said quietly, "in those final years. I never opened them." Eleanor nodded. "He told me, said you were both too stubborn for your own good." Nathaniel pulled out his phone, navigating to his archived folder. There they were, dozens of messages from his brother, the last one sent 3 weeks before his death. With trembling fingers he opened it. "Nate, doctors say time's running short. There are things you should know. The work I've been doing, it's bigger than our disagreements. I've met someone who believes in it like I do, to know what to do with it if I can't finish. Whatever happens. Remember the Treefort Code, brothers before business. The Treefort Code, their childhood pact, made in the backyard oak when Nathaniel was 12 and Harrison 9. A promise that no matter what successes or failures came, they would choose each other first. He had broken that code when he dissolved their partnership, choosing business stability over his brother's unpredictable health needs. Harrison had kept it until the end, entrusting his life's work to Nathaniel through Olivia. Back in his penthouse that evening, Nathaniel opened his laptop and pulled up Horizon's financial records. For 3 hours, he worked methodically, tracking the value created by Harrison's technology, nearly 60% of the company's current worth. Then he drafted 2 documents, a posthumous credit acknowledgement naming Harrison Fallon West as the originating inventor of the Horizon interface system, and a trust establishing the Harrison West Foundation for Cancer Research, initially funded with 30% of Nathaniel's personal shares in the company. As dawn broke over the city, he found himself reaching for his phone. Olivia answered on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. "I've been going through Harrison's things," he said without preamble. "I found your photographs." A pause. "They're good memories, despite everything." "You made him happy," Nathaniel said, "when I couldn't be there. Thank you for that." The silence between them held less tension than before. "I'm establishing a foundation in his name," Nathaniel continued, "and crediting him properly for his work. It's long overdue." "He would be proud," Olivia said softly. That's all he wanted, to create something meaningful. Nathaniel took a deep breath. "There's something else. The innovation lab at Horizon's new research campus. I'd like to name it after both of you. The Harrison and Olivia Fallon Center for Adaptive Technologies." A sharp intake of breath came through the line. "Nathaniel, you preserved his legacy," he said. "You deserve to share in it." "What about us?" she asked after a moment. Nathaniel looked out at the skyline brightening with morning light. "I don't know yet, but I'd like to talk. Really talk. This time, about Harrison. About you. About all the things that have been left unsaid." "I'd like that," she replied. "Maybe we could start somewhere neutral. The bench by the lake where Harrison used to sketch his ideas. You still remember that place?" "I remember everything," Olivia said. "That's both the blessing and the curse." Rebuilding on truth 6 months later. Nathaniel stood at the podium in the newly completed Harrison and Olivia Fallon Center for Adaptive Technologies. Behind him, a wall-sized portrait of Harrison hung beside a gallery of Olivia's photographs documenting the human impact of the technologies they'd developed, children with adaptive learning tools. elderly patients using interface systems to communicate despite physical limitations. Today we honor not just innovation, but integrity, Nathaniel began, addressing the gathered press and industry leaders. My brother Harrison saw possibilities where others saw limitations. His work continues not only in our products but in our commitment to accessibility and ethical development. From the front row, Olivia watched him, her camera resting unused in her lap. They had spent months rebuilding out their romantic relationship, which they had agreed needed to be set aside, but something perhaps more valuable, a partnership, based on shared purpose and transparent communication. After the ceremony, they walked through the lab spaces together. Students and researchers nodded respectfully as they passed, many wearing badges with Harrison's silhouette as a symbol of the scholarship program established in his name. He would have loved this chaos, Olivia said, gesturing to a development area where prototypes in various stages of completion littered workbenches. The messier the workspace, the more creativity happening. That was his motto. Nathaniel smiled. Remember his apartment, components everywhere. I used to think it was disorganized, but he knew where every piece was. Down to the last resistor, she agreed. Their easy conversation would have seemed impossible months ago. The path to this point had been painful, more revelations, more grief, more reckoning with the past. They had visited Harrison's grave together, Nathaniel kneeling to touch the headstone he had never seen before. They had argued about the ethical implications of how his technology had been transferred and credited. They had cried, separately and together, for the brother and fiancé they had both loved in different ways. The Beijing team sent their preliminary results, Nathaniel said as they reached his office. The pediatric application is testing at 97% efficacy. Harrison would be doing his ridiculous victory dance right now, Olivia replied, demonstrating a jerky movement that made Nathaniel laugh. The board is pushing for a public offering next quarter, he said, sobering. It means more scrutiny, more questions about Harrison's role and our history. Olivia nodded. I'm ready if you are. No more secrets. They had agreed early in their reconciliation that honesty would guide them, even when inconvenient. The narrative they had constructed of Harrison's posthumous contribution through his fiancée, of Nathaniel's belated recognition of his brother's genius was simplified but true. The press had initially sensationalized the story, but interest had gradually shifted to the technological innovations themselves. There's something else, Nathaniel said, pulling a document from his desk. The Foundation's first major research grant. I wanted you to see it before the announcement. Olivia scanned the paper, her eyes widening. Wellspring, that's where Harrison was treated, where you met him, where Jasmine Reeves worked. She's finishing her oncology nursing degree next month. By the way, you've been in touch with her. She's joining the Foundation's advisory board, Nathaniel explained. Her perspective is valuable. She sees the human side of what we're trying to accomplish. Olivia handed the document back, her fingers brushing his. For a moment, the old electricity sparked between them, a reminder of what might have been. Dinner next week, Nathaniel asked, stepping back slightly. The research team from Johns Hopkins will be in town. They're interested in your documentation methodology. I'll be there, she promised. As she prepared to leave, Nathaniel called after her. Olivia, are you happy with how things have turned out? She considered the question seriously. Not the way I expected to be, but yes, I think I am. Harrison connected us for a reason. This feels right, continuing his legacy together, as partners rather than ... double quotes, she trailed off. Rather than lovers, he finished for her. Maybe that's how it needed to be. They had tried dating again, briefly, 3 months after the engagement party. But the shadow of Harrison had loomed too large, the foundation of trust too recently repaired. They had decided, mutually, that their connection was meant for something else. He would be proud of both of us, Olivia said, for finding a way forward that honors him and helps others. As she walked away, Nathaniel returned to the window overlooking the campus. The buildings bearing his company's name now also carried his brother's legacy. The wealth he had accumulated now funded research that might have saved Harrison's life. The woman Harrison had loved now worked alongside him to ensure that their shared vision would continue to change lives. It wasn't the happy ending he had once envisioned. There was no wedding, no fairy tale resolution where love conquered all. But there was purpose. There was honesty. There was a foundation built on truth rather than comfortable illusions. And perhaps, Nathaniel reflected as he watched Olivia photograph a group of scholarship recipients in the courtyard below, that was a rarer and more valuable outcome than the one they had initially sought. Their connection, complicated, painful, and genuine, had created something lasting. Not a marriage, but a mission. Not a romance, but a redemption. In the end, the secret the waitress exposed had shattered a relationship but healed a deeper wound, the rift between brothers that had persisted beyond death. And in that healing, both Nathaniel and Olivia had found a way to honor Harris's memory that was more meaningful than either could have accomplished alone.